So at the end of December, my uncle died and left me this sword. It's been in his garage for a while, collecting some rust, and this sword is actually a family heirloom. It belonged to my grandfather years and years and years ago. It was given to my uncle, and now that my uncle has passed on, I've decided that I'm going to take this sword and restore it to its as close to its original luster as I can. This is an old, if you look at the insignia on it, it's an old freemason sword used for ceremonies. It's not sharpened or anything. It does have some etching on it, and it has a name etched on it on this side. Joseph Schilling. Anyway, we're going to take this sword and try to restore it back to its original luster, but there's a lot of work to do on it. Some of this brass needs to be cleaned up. This used to be a kind of a shiny silver, it looks like, but we're not going to be able to plate that again, so I think we're going to go with, we're going to get the rust off of it and paint it black. But we have to restore all this this brass to try to get it back to looking nice, and then we'll display it with some honor because it's an heirloom. It needs to be respected. Let me show you what the target is that we're trying to get to here. This is I actually collect swords, not on purpose. This is a my old NCO sword from the Marine Corps. And you see it has the same kind of handle. Leather with twisted brass braid. It has a knuckle guard similar to this one. You see the leather with the twisted braid brass. And so we're going to try to get this sword to look like this sword. You see this has got a leather sheath. So we're going to make it look kind of leathery by painting it black. We'll get a kind of a satin black on it so it's not too shiny. And it will look kind of leathery. And that will look good against this once we get this all polished up. I've seen a couple of these online where they actually put red paint on the crosses. There's a cross here and there's a cross there. I don't know if I'm going to do that yet, but we're going to start with getting it clean. So first thing first, we need to take these brass pieces off. There's a single screw on each one of them. And we'll slide these off and have a look at the damage. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I got the brass parts off. These came off pretty easy, just a little screw on the back. They did take a little bit of convincing because there was some, rust holding them on. But this one was the hard one. I was able to convince it by putting the tip of a flat screwdriver in this little V section and just tapping it down, and it convinced. Once it broke away, everything looked pretty good. So I think the rest of this is going to polish pretty well. I think that these brass components are actually plated. They don't feel heavy like they should if they were brass, and you can see where it looks like there's some pot metal underneath these. So we're going to use a couple of, there's a method that you can brassify, if you will. It's not actually electroplating. We're going to get them hot and then run them with a brass wire wheel, and the brass will deposit itself on the hot metal. So, but we'll clean these up real nice, and they'll look nice and shiny and brass. Everything came out real nice. This is the scabbard body. It is not plated. You can see it's just rust. So that's actually good news. We won't have to paint this. I'll be able to polish this metal. You can polish ferrous metals to a very, very fine sheen. We can get this down to a mere finish. We just need to sand it in successive grades of sandpaper up to 5,000, and then we'll put a buffing wheel on it and see if we can get this to a glass, a mirror finish. That way we won't have to paint this, and we can keep it in its pristine state. After we get to that point, and after we've reinstalled the brass, we're going to hit it with a little bit of clear coat just to protect it from getting rusty again. Okay, let's get started on this scabbard and see how well we can polish this. Like I said, this is not plated. This is just a nice steel. So we can polish this. We'll get the pitting out. It's not a whole lot of pitting. It's just surface rust. So let's see what we can make this thing look like. All right, get started. All right, so first step here, we're going to put some rubber gloves on and give this thing an acid bath. I like to use phosphoric acid to treat surface rust on ferrous metals. And the easiest way to get that at the store is to get this concrete and masonry metal prep. I actually reuse this, so I'm going to put it in a little receptacle here and just give myself a bit of a basin. And I'm going to scrub this down with a wire brush. Rubber gloves are a must. This stuff will burn right through your fingers. All right, let's give this the once over. I don't want to use a whole lot of this, and I don't want to soak it because I don't want to change this. I don't want to have too much acid changing the shape. But I do want to get the rust off of it. You can see almost immediately the rust turns into a foam. And just want to get that off so we can get as much of the bare metal exposed. And then we'll get to sanding. See a lot of that nice shiny is already starting to come through. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and cut the video here and we'll cut forward to it. All right, so after a good acid wash, got all the surface rust off. You can see it's actually starting to look a little like there's still some good surface on here. So I'm very encouraged. There's a little dent right here. I think we can minimize that. I'm very encouraged that this is going to polish up nice without needing to be painted. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a go. We'll see how far we can take this thing just by polishing it. So I'm going to start with some 800. We'll take it to some 1000 and then 2000, and then we'll take it to the wire wheel over on the drill press, and we'll see how shiny we can get this thing without having to paint it. All right, let's get started with this 800. Yeah, that's responding really nicely. It's nice and smooth. Not a whole lot of deep pits. So I'm going to stick with the 800. I thought I would try the 800 and I really don't want to go any rougher because I don't want to create any grooves. And I certainly don't want to change the thickness so these will slide or anything. So 800 seems to be doing well. Now the focus of the 800 is to get the visible rust reduced. So we want to come away with nothing but shiny metal when we get done with this 800. And then we'll progress through the grades to get a nice shine on it. So that's the goal anyway. So I'm going to continue on with this 800. We'll check back in when I get done. All right, so here we are at the end of the 800 grit sanding. See, it's got a bit of a sheen. It's almost satiny. But majority of the rust is gone. There are some pits and some bends. You can see it looks like right here in its history, somebody bent the scabbard and then bent it back. I don't know if they banged on it or something, but there's some bends right in here. We're gonna. I think that's create some character. We're gonna add that, leave that in there. I don't want to gouge it out. And I think that having some character and some patina, you can see there's some pitting right in here. It's just still a little bit of rust pitting. I think if we leave some of that in there, it'll add sort of an antiquing to it. Here's some more rusty pitting right in here. Some of this is going to be covered by the brass pieces. You can see like right here, a brass piece goes over here. It's clean here, a little bit of pitting here. So we're going to go ahead and take this down to the 1000 grit and then the 2000 grit. I'll break back in between each of those and show you how the metal progresses. Here's some more dents and pits. I think that's going to add some character. If it looks really bad, I'll just paint it, right? I mean, I have nothing to lose. I was going to paint it, but it looks like it's nice and shiny. So let's progress with this. Get the 1000 and 2000 grit, and then I'll break in before I hit the buffing wheel. All right, so there we are at 1000. See, the sheen is getting a little bit shinier. You can start to see reflections of things. Look at it this direction, you can see reflections. See the reflections? And it is certainly getting shiny. But again, we're keeping some of this patina in here. Some of these colors. We want these scratches and whatnot. I want to keep that in there. I don't want to make it look completely new, but we're polishing it down. So down to the 2000 now. Let's see what that looks like. All right, so there we have it at 2000. Very shiny. Let's go ahead and hit this with the buffer on the drill press and bring it to that nice glass finish that we're looking for. All right, so here I've got the buffing wheel set up on my drill press. A little irony here, the jeweler's rouge that we're using is a red jeweler's rouge, which, I don't know if you know, this is actually iron oxide, which is basically just rust. So we took rust off, and now we're using rust to get more rust off. We're going to use rust to polish the scabbard here. So let's go ahead and load this thing up and get some buffing done. more. Very shiny. All right, I'm going to finish up with this. We've got a long way to go. And then I'll break back in and we'll get started on those brass pieces. All right, there we go. Nice and shiny. Like I said, it still has a bit of patina to it. Some of the blemishes and dents are still in there, so it has kind of an antique look to it. But it's nice and shiny. It's no longer rusty. And I was actually worried that if I had to paint it, that these wouldn't slide on over the paint and I would end up making, scratch marks as it ran down the paint. So I'm really glad that we were able to get this as restored as we did. And so anyway, there we go. This portion, the scabbard here, is nice and shiny. I'm very happy with it. So on to the brass pieces, or the brassy pieces. Again, I was looking at this and I don't think that it's solid brass because it looks like it's flaking off right here, but I don't know what kind of metal this is under it. It could be brass. Could just be that maybe there's a glaze on this to keep the brass head come off. I don't know. So I'm gonna take the buffing wheel off of the drill press and put a steel wire brush on there, not a brass, but a steel wire brush on there. And we're going to get these nice and clean, get all the rust and any kind of corrosion that's on there, get them back to their bare metal, and then we'll make a better assessment as to, what we're going to do and move forward. All right, so let's get that going. All right, so that's good news. Preliminary look at the metal, and it is brass. So we don't have to worry about plating this. This flaky stuff is just some sort of a paint or a clear coat that was flaking off, and we just need to get all this tarnish off of the brass. So this will be a real easy cleanup. We'll just run these on a wire brush and then polish them, and we will have nice brass fittings. Excellent. All right, moving forward. So those cleaned up really nice. I'm so happy that they were solid brass. It's kind of a lightweight brass, like it's a tinny brass, but it's brass nonetheless, solid metal, and it's going to polish up nice. So I'm going to go ahead and take the wire brush attachment off of my drill press, put the buffing wheel back on there, and we're going to buff all these flat surfaces, and we'll get this back plate glassy, nice and shiny, so we can start working on reassembling. So these are going to look really nice once we get it all polished up. Excellent. All right, moving forward. There's the scabbard, all reassembled. And polished. The back side looks nice. Got a lot of flat surfaces, and those are polished nice too. There are some manufacturing marks. This says 67. That says 67. I don't know, this is 67 as well. I don't know exactly what those mean. I'll have to look those up. But the next thing here is to work on the sword itself. Now this cannot be disassembled, but I will be able to replace this small piece of felt right here. So we'll put a new piece of felt on there. But pretty much this is just going to be a matter of cleanup and polish. Hopefully this is the same material that the scabbard had, and that this is a sort of a tinny brass that can be polished. So let's get started on that. So the hilt of the sword has a little piece of leather. This is the original piece of leather that was in there. It has gotten old and brittle and has been crushed, and it's no longer serviceable. It goes right here on the hilt, right at the very base, and what it does is, first of all, it closes off this little gap right here, so you can't see the join. But it also, when you slide the sword into the scabbard, it's a buffer that keeps it from, like, you know, damaging the scabbard or itself. So anyway, I don't just have leather laying around, but I did have an old pair of welding gloves, and I took some leather off of that and cut it into the hole and used a Sharpie and made it black. So now we can just slide this on. But before I put that on, I'm going to go ahead and take advantage of it not being there and clean this surface up really nice. I've already cleaned the the blade. This is all plated steel. And you really can't use any abrasives on this to bring it back to a polish. So the best I could do is to use some steel wool here. I got some steel wool, and just rub down all of the rust spots and any places where the plating has worn off, and just polish that as best I could. The other thing that I polished that I was really surprised I was able to polish was these brass braids in the hilt here. These polished really nice with just the buffing wheel, and the buffing wheel wasn't coarse enough to damage the material underneath. So that we got off real easy on that one. But the rest of this stuff is very intricate, so I'm not going to be able to use bigger tools for that. I'm going to have to use some hand brushes, wire brushes, and I'm going to put some attachments on my Dremel tool, and we'll bring this up to a nice luster and polish it up really good. Again, I was able to verify that this is brass, and it cleans up really nice, so we don't have to worry about it being plated or anything. We just need to get the tarnish and rust off of it so that it's clean, and then you can polish it really well. So I'm going to go at this with my Dremel tool, and we'll be really close to being done with this project. Once I get all that together, we're going to take this new piece of leather, and we'll fashion it back in here. A little bit of, I think, some super glue will make that nice and stiff in there, and then we'll be done. All right, let's get busy. Well, that's about as shiny as I can get that. Went over it with the buffing wheel on my Dremel, cleaned it up really nice. Here you can see I've got the leather piece mounted in there, and that is glued in place with a little cyanoacrylate, so that is not coming off. And this leather piece in here, I don't think it's leather, it's just some kind of material. To blacken that, we just used a little bit of boot polish. So that came out really nice. So let's go ahead and put them all together and do a quick closing. That looks really sweet. All right, so there's the sword all together. Here's the scabbard all polished up and clean. My goodness, all that rust is gone. Here's the back side. These brass pieces got cleaned up really nice. All right, so I think this will make a great heirloom piece, and it'll pass through my generation into the other generations. So this is a quick video on how to restore a ceremonial sword. It's not actually a sword like you take into battle or anything. It's for cutting cake and stuff. But ceremonial sword, I believe this is a freemason sword by the icons on it. Anyway, if you have any questions or comments, throw that in the comment section. I really had a lot of fun doing this. Cheers.